Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, where we teach you how to maximize your results with minimalist fitness strategies. My name is Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project, author of several books, including Grind Style Calisthenics and Smart Bodyweight Training. First off, in today's episode, a very exciting announcement that I'd like to announce. Officially starting next month, early December, is the first round of the Grind Style Calisthenics Challenge, or the GSC Challenge. Basically, what the GSC Challenge is an app-based approach to Grind Style Calisthenics. Well, I will send you not only workouts that are custom made for the challenge to progress you along and teach you exactly what to do in your workouts. There's also challenges of the day to get you outside your comfort zone, challenges of the week, challenges of the month. In addition to belonging to the GSC Challenge, there's also a special GSC Challenge Facebook group where you can ask questions from the community, get answers, and just little insights and stuff for social support as well. There's a ton of things coming with this whole thing. I can't really explain it all right here, but if you're interested in learning more, check out the link down below in the description or on the post or on reddeltaproject.com to learn more about the GSC Challenge. In today's episode, I wanted to share with you some great insights that I've been getting from a new book that I've been reading called Elastic Habits by Stephen Guise. Now, Stephen is known for his mini habits series, which is also fantastic, but the Elastic Habits is just one of those absolute gold books that I highly recommend everybody check out, because being elastic and flexible in your approach in success, but especially with fitness, is so critically important. We often fall into this misguided belief that rigidity and being strict about how we're eating and working out is actually the key to success. But the research has borne out that the more strict and rigid we are, the more we tend to break and fall off the wagon more frequently. The thinking behind it is that when we embark on diet and exercise habits, we want to give ourselves the best chances of success. Rightfully so. And we understand inherently that consistency and staying on track is critical for making that happen. And that makes sense so far. But where we jump the train a little bit is when we think the best chance of being successful and therefore consistent is to be rigid and strict and saying, okay, I am going to run a mile every single day, no matter what. I'm going to eat this type of diet every day, no matter what. And it's very strict and it's very rigid. But as John Berardi, founder of Precision Nutrition, has said, is that flexibility is the key to consistency, and rigidity is consistency's enemy. Because life is always changing. Life is always serving you up a different level and set of circumstances. So trying to be rigid and strict is like trying to hold your ground against a hurricane. Everything's always changing. So when you wake up every morning, you're thinking, all right, how am I going to make this rigid, structured, dogmatic approach to diet and exercise work in a life that doesn't like rigidity, that doesn't like things to be super strict? So what Stephen's proposal is in his book, which I fully agree with, is be flexible in your approaches. Be elastic, in other words. Bend rather than break, because when you can do that, you stand way better chances of being consistent in your diet and exercise habits, even though it's not so strict and rigid all the time. The reason why this works is because it's about the difference between strategy versus tactics. Now, a strategy is the overall general approach you have that you're trying to use in order to achieve success. And think of that as your general battle plan, right? And then tactics are the minutia. They're the detail on how you're implementing that strategy. But when we get very strict and rigid, we often make the rigid part about our tactics. And what ends up happening is we try to do things the same way all the time, regardless of what our circumstances are. And that's kind of like saying, I'm always going to wear a t-shirt, no matter what the weather is outside. Some days it's going to work pretty well. Other days it's going to be terrible. But if I'm rigid and say, nope, every day I wear a t-shirt no matter what, that's not going to help me promote better alignment in some days. Some days I should be wearing more, some days I should be wearing less, right? It's the same thing with diet and exercise. You can't successfully do the same thing all the time. You can't keep using the same rigid tactics. As long as the strategy remains intact, then your ability to stay consistent in pursuit of your goals remains there. In our fitness culture, though, we tend to get lost in the weeds because we focus so much on tactics, right? What's our sets? How many sets? How many reps? What exercise are you doing? What's your protein to carbohydrate ratio? What kind of protein sources should you use and stuff? These are all tactics stuff. It's not that they're not important, but what really is responsible for your success isn't your tactics, it's your strategy, which is why in today's video, I want to talk about some of the worst strategies we have, because it's your strategy that's more responsible for your success. The tactics really aren't that important. What you want to do for your tactical side is bend and select the tactics however you want. Use the tools, use the exercises, use the programs that you want to use. Use the exercises that make you feel good. What kind of protein sources should you have? Well, the ones you like to eat the most. What kind of exercises should you do? Well, the ones that make you feel pretty good, that seem to help you implement the strategy the best. Because the better you implement your overall strategy, the better your results will be, regardless of your actual tactics. So I wanted to share with you today why so many people are struggling in health and fitness. It's not because of their tactics, it's because there's two huge strategies in our fitness culture that are really not very good strategies. And even though we keep changing the tactics around everywhere from here till Tuesday, the strategies remain intact. And as long as the strategy sucks, your results suck, regardless of what your tactics actually are. So first up, we have what is the general strategy out there for exercise and working out. And the general strategy I keep coming across time and time again is the bust your ass strategy. Work hard, just basically fatigue and exhaust yourself strategy. And that's not to say that hard work isn't important for success. You need to work damn hard in order to change your body. But what has ended up happening is that we've developed this strategy of, I'm just gonna work myself really hard. I'm gonna push myself as hard as possible, exhaust myself, and if I feel exhausted and tired and sore and just all spent out, that'll be the sign that I had a really good workout, that I'm really pushing myself. And I understand where that's coming from, because it's very satisfying to wake up the next day and feel a little soreness in your legs, right? Or to come out of a workout and be like, oh, I can really relax today because I really worked hard. I totally get where this is coming from. But where it jumps the rails is this idea that hard work is going to get you what you want. That as long as you can push yourself hard enough, you're going to get the results you want, which isn't at all true. Because in fact, I would even argue that the reason why most people fail is because they're working too hard, because they're pushing themselves too much, simply because you cannot scale hard work. From the beginner to the advanced athlete, we all have a very limited and finite capacity for work, because hard work, after all, is nothing more than the expenditure of one's resources. You're spending time, you're spending energy, mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy, right? We're just expending of ourselves. That's all hard work really is. So we're essentially saying, I'm going to try and become successful by just spending as much of myself as I possibly can. But you just can't do that. You can't infinitely spend time and energy, especially when you consider that life outside of your workouts and everything is already taking up a lot of your time and energy as it is. So going into your programs and your workouts with this strategy to expend as much as possible, you don't have much to spend. So instead of the work harder strategy, I'm very much, of course, a fan of the work smarter strategy. Yes, you're going to have to work hard in your workouts. Yes, you're going to have to push yourself outside your comfort zone. And yes, there are going to be times when you're going to push yourself beyond what you're physically capable of. That's part of the nature. But just in and of that self does not in any way promise you're going to get results. However, when you apply yourself in a smarter way, in other words, you're trying to improve your proficiency of those activities, saying like, okay, I did a handstand, now how am I going to do it better? This is where that neuromuscular proficiency of grind style calisthenics comes in. When you do things smarter and with a better level of proficiency, you'll get much better results from the same amount of work, or even less work, which is why I tell people I can accomplish more in a single set of push-ups than a lot of other people can in an entire hour-long workout. And the reason is simply because when I'm doing my push-ups, I've got more skill and proficiency in each rep than someone else may when they're just kind of flailing around in the gym for an hour. So learning is the key to breaking out of the work harder mentality. The more you learn about how to work out better, the more productivity you'll get from every ounce of effort and time that you spend. And the great thing about skill is that it's infinitely scalable. It's not a finite capacity like time and energy expenditure. It's something that you can always improve. You can always get better at skills. Talk to any athlete who's been training for decades of their life and say, are you the best that you could possibly be? And they'll always say, no, of course not. There's always something to improve and work on. So working as well as possible rather than as hard as possible is a way more effective and smarter strategy. And you can, again, apply whatever tactics you want in either case, but using a smart strategy as opposed to a bust your tail and hope for the best strategy is going to be the smarter and more effective approach. When it comes to diet and nutrition, the strategy that isn't working very well for a lot of people is that a lot of times in our dietary world, when people are like, I'm going to eat right, or I'm going to try and change my diet around, the overwhelming strategy that exists in our fitness culture is the strategy of restriction, of cut back. And we've got all sorts of tactics that make this happen, right? We've got vegan, we've got carnivore diet, we've got intermittent fasting, we've got paleo, we've got clean eating, we've got if it fits your macros, we've got a ton of these tactical elements. But they're all the same strategy. They all are basically the same thing. And I know a lot of times when we look at tactics, we think, oh, it's totally different. Like carnivore and vegan are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. But they're actually not. They're the same strategy. The strategy is, well, let's take a look at this overabundance of food resources that we have, and let's just somehow restrict people. We'll restrict them in what they can eat, or how they can eat, or when they can eat. It doesn't really matter what the restriction is, it's just something restrictive. And this is a strategy that can work. All tactics and strategies work to some degree. I know some people will say, what? It works. It doesn't matter if it works. I'm saying, does it work great for everybody all the time for a long period of time? Because anything can work for a short period of time. But as I've discussed in the history of like dieting and stuff in my previous episodes, when you look at the history of how human beings have tried to control and have a healthy diet, we've been using the restrictive dietary strategy for hundreds of years, and it's never worked very well. We've changed the tactics 100 million different ways, and we're going to continue to do so, and it's still going to end up being a pretty big failure because it hasn't solved the obesity epidemic. It's only been used by a short percentage of the population, and it has a very bad track record of long-term success. That's why over here at RDP, we don't have a restrictive eating strategy. We have a satisfaction and fulfillment strategy of healthy eating. So instead of looking at diet and saying, okay, we've got these issues and challenges, the strategy is to restrict ourselves somehow. Instead, we're all about saying, how do we feed ourselves as much as possible? How do we satisfy our four primal appetites of hunger, nutritional need, energy level, and palatability? How do we satisfy those appetites as well as possible? So instead of restricting, we're trying to satisfy, which is a completely different strategy. And it does it, and it flies in the face of all of these ideas, all of those tactics, because when you have things starting off from a restrictive strategy, you're immediately 2 strikes behind when you get to the plate. And the reason is because if your appetites are not satisfied, your diet isn't healthy. And I don't care what the science says about paleo or carnivore or vegan or anything like that. If you're depriving yourself, you're not satisfying your appetites. And the whole point of a healthy diet is satisfying those 4 primal appetites. So when we reverse it, and instead of saying, let's use a strategy of restriction and have a strategy of fulfillment and satisfaction, now we can go in the right direction. We can use food with purpose. Instead of trying to say, as long as I don't eat something, then I'm going to be healthy, or saying, what can I eat that's going to have the greatest impact on me? So thank you very much for listening. Please leave your thoughts, comments, questions down below. Don't forget, down in the description here on YouTube is a link to check out the Grind Style Calisthenics Challenge, as well as I'll have information on reddeltaproject.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you find the time and energy, please leave reviews. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you're listening to this, really helps us out a whole heck of a lot to spread the word, because if you're finding value in it, someone else will as well, and it's always good karma for you. Talk to you next week. Till then, be fit, live free.